Normally people do that before they start recording. I think.
No. It has to be part of the podcast. That's just kind of,
That's how it goes. I
just
see.
how much of a train wreck this thing is. It's just,
Obviously.
it has to be represented right in the first 20 seconds.
Yeah,
So.
clearly.
So we are Rage Players. Today we have a special guest, my buddy Joel, who has done the Game of the Year podcast with us previously.
Yes.
With Chase and all the old people that we used to do that stuff with. And
Oh yeah, those old people.
Old. He's
Old people.
Old man. Yep. And he is on a couple other podcasts himself, which we'll probably let him plug at the end of the podcast. But for now, he has to shut the hell up. I'm just kidding. You can say that now if you want to. Oh, I'm getting text messages, guys.
Yes,
This
yes,
is,
you
this
are.
Is really good.
Ron.
This is really good.
Ron,
I'm really
shut the door.
prepared for this podcast.
Your phone is on. What is wrong with you?
Actually, it was Micah, which I'll read this in the podcast so he can be part of it. Because originally, my buddy Micah was also supposed to be part of this podcast, but he did not beat this game that we are going to be discussing on time. So he said,
So fuck him.
I don't think I will make it. He's going to look at the schedule, try to pick a different game, and start it this week because I got some time off. Okay, so maybe he'll be on a future podcast.
Potentially. Okay.
Now we know
That
this.
was about as podcast relevant as a text in the middle of recording could be.
I mean,
Yes,
yeah, it was
that's
related
true.
to the podcast. So now you guys know that Micah will be on a future podcast.
I'm kind of like, I'm proud of you, Ron, for being on topic with the text messages.
Hey, thanks. Man.
That's pretty great. All right, so the game that Micah didn't finish, and the game that we'll be talking about today, is Donkey Kong Country 2 for the Nintendo, or not the Nintendo 64, sorry, the Super Nintendo.
Correct.
Guys, I have to admit I didn't finish it either.
I kind of. You've played it before, though, right, Joel?
Like
No?
6 or 7 times.
Okay, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
so we're good then.
So you at least have some relevance to discuss the full game.
Yes.
In the same sense. Plus, I think you've played enough that you could probably discuss.
So I'm just curious.
Everything.
Did either of you two 102% it, or did you just try to get to the end?
102%? It's one of those games? No, I didn't even attempt
So
to.
the first
80%
game
it.
was the completion for the first game was 101%. The completion for the second game is 102%, and the completion for the third game is 103%.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I did not. I think I got about 40. No, I got like 53%
I didn't look.
by the time I finished. So no, I didn't do. I unlocked one of the Lost World levels. I didn't play it because I just beat the podcast 15 minutes before we started this. So
You
that's
just
why
beat the
I'm super
podcast?
prepared. I beat the podcast. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
I beat that. I beat the
Podcast
podcast level.
solved.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, I beat the game 15 minutes before the podcast.
The if you guys are struggling with the main game, it's probably for the best because some of those Lost World stages are really difficult.
That's what I read.
Yeah, I was going to try one of them, but I didn't have enough time to do it. So, but I don't know. If I was playing it more casually, I think I would have tried a few more of those things. But
It's really satisfying to beat the whole thing, and like there's a second, like if you beat all the Lost World stages, there's a second boss fight.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Is
it's really cool. Like if you enjoyed the game, I definitely recommend going back and doing that at some point. But it is quite the challenge.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of times where you have to know basically what's coming in the level to be able to get some of those like hidden coins and the DK.
I mean,
things
it's
like,
very
wrong
90s
letters.
platformer in that way. Yeah.
So
So,
it made it kind of hard to want to push for those because I was like, shit, I'm gonna die if I do this, and I don't want to do this again.
so before we get too far into it, I think we should just kind of generally say what the game is. Obviously,
Sure.
we already said it came out on Super Nintendo. Ron, do you want to look up when it came out, or does anybody know when it came out offhand?
1995.
1995.
3
Okay.
years after I was born.
Nice.
Kind of amazingly, it's like only a year after the first Donkey Kong Country. Like,
Yeah.
they turned
That
these
is
around
kinda crazy.
fast.
And it had a ton of references, not a ton, but like they very clearly made references in this game to the first game.
To
Like,
other rare
we didn't
titles,
do
yeah.
this in
Like
the first game, or
Well-
I've returned from the last game, or whatever. Yeah.
Well, there's also references to other Rare stuff. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
there's one of the I think one of the Kong colleges has some Killer Instinct machines
Oh,
set up.
really?
Nice. I didn't know.
Well, they have references to pretty much a lot of different games too.
Yeah.
So, they have Mario and Link and Yoshi at the end.
Yep. Anyway, all right.
How many DK coins here?
So me and Ron played it on some emulator. I can't remember, SNES 9X or something like that is what it was called.
Yeah.
Joel's played it multiple times on, I'm sure, various things.
So I've played it on the Super Nintendo. I've played it on the Wii Virtual Console. I've played it on the Wii U Virtual Console, and I've played it on the 3DS Virtual Console. And I'm pretty sure I've played it on some emulators, including the PSP.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
It's
Yeah,
kind of one of my
Nintendo, take
go-to
note.
games. Whenever there's like a new like Nintendo platform that is available for, it's one that I'll pick up and play again.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, Nintendo, if you want free money, put Donkey Kong Country 2 on the Switch, and Joel will buy it Virtual Console.
I will. That's going to be a sweet, sweet $8 for you, Nintendo. Totally sounds worth it.
It does. Yeah. So, the game, if nobody knows who it is who's listening, is a platformer, just like the first game and various other It's a Donkey Kong game. They're platformer games. So
It's kind of country game. Yeah.
it's a 2D platformer. Yeah. So yeah, that's what the game is.
Congrats, good job. It's made by Rare, as we kind of said,
Yep.
which is the developer that makes all those classic games that are amazing.
Like
We should
Battletoads.
probably
Like Battletoads,
probably
yes.
give the full name of the game, right?
Oh fuck.
I
Donkey
guess,
Kong
Donkey
Country.
2,
Go for
Diddy
it.
Kong's Quest.
Nope. Diddy's Kong Quest.
Diddy's Kong Quest, yes, thank you, sorry.
It's a
I don't even know
it's a
the
pun,
game that
a
we're
play
playing.
on words.
Diddy's Kong. Oh, I just got it. Why am I that slow?
Oh my gosh.
It's I mean, people are just getting it now who've played it when they were children. So like,
That's sad.
it
It's
is.
hilarious at the same time. Dang, I didn't realize that they released these 3 games and then they didn't release a Donkey Kong Country for 14 years.
Nice.
That's nuts.
I mean, they released Donkey Kong 64, and then they had a bunch of like weird peripheral-based stuff with like Donkey Konga,
Konga Blast, yeah.
and then whatever, yeah, Jungle Blast, and whatever King of Swing was.
Oh, sure. I kind of forgot those games existed.
Yeah,
guess I'm
most
more
people
speaking
do.
Donkey Kong Country in general, but yeah, the Donkey Kong stuff has kind of been all over the place, I feel like, in terms of the games they're making. What they are. Because the 3D platformer and weird peripheral stuff, but anyway, should we get into talking about this game that we played?
Yeah, so for maybe Joel's sake, and also mainly for people who are just listening to us for the first time, what we're going to do is we're going to break down this game into multiple categories. We're going to rate these categories that are graphics, sound, gameplay, narrative, and then our personal bias rating. We're going to rate these all 1 to 10. And then like 5 being average, anything above 5 being above average, with like 9 and 10 being like perfect, and 1 anything below 5 being below average, and then 1 being like really bad. So at the end we're going to add them all up, and we're going to give an overall score of 50. So yeah, that's kind of how we do things here. So first is we're going to go over the graphics of Donkey Kong Country 2, which is kind of hard because it's a 2D game on the Super Nintendo. So
yeah, I don't know. It's got an interesting style that I feel like a lot of the games on that system don't have.
Yeah.
I
So
haven't really seen in a lot of other stuff. Like, I feel like
you
when you're playing
guys-
Donkey Kong Country, it's very clearly Donkey Kong Country.
yeah,
yeah, do you guys know what the like graphical like the process for making the graphics of the Donkey Kong Country series was? So the games are 3D use 3D models.
Yeah.
But
okay.
like obviously the Super Nintendo can't render 3D models. So what they did was they used some super expensive at the time 3D modeling software, and then pre-rendered it, like all of the animations and everything, on like a fucking supercomputer, and then made sprites out of those. So
That's cool.
that's why
Yeah.
it's got such a unique visual style, is because it's technically 3D graphics that were pre-rendered into sprites for the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
When you say that, I 100% can see it too.
Yeah.
That's what the game looks almost 3D in that sense.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Especially
they
when
did.
have the intro and the random. I don't know if there's any other cutscenes, but like when it's very close up on Diddy Kong and.
Well, if you look at the like walk cycles for a lot of the enemies and the Kongs and like the Kong's idle animations, like you can see they're showing off the whole 3D thing by having them kind of pivoting and stuff.
Yeah.
It's really neat, but I think it does kind of hurt the like timeless quality that a lot of the nicer sprite based games on the Super Nintendo have. Because like you look at like a Mega Man X or like any of the Final Fantasies even on the Super Nintendo, and like. Yeah, they're obviously pretty low-res sprites, but they were designed within the limits of the palette and the like resolution available to, look really crisp and really clear. Like even today, like those games are pretty easy to parse and look pretty nice, just because like it's such a distinct style that suits the technology that they're on.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's one thing that I thought was kind of cool is that this game doesn't really look that insanely old. Like it's lived up to it's aged well, I should say. That's
right. Yeah, I mean you can definitely tell like how pixely the models are just due to the like what is it 240p resolution of the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't look bad. I feel like. I think it's held up well enough to the point that it doesn't struggle to be played in today's age. Comparing this to, for instance, Star Fox 64, which we talked about on a previous podcast, that kind of looked very pixelated and hard to play in some sections, I feel like, because of that. Whereas this was super playable because of the way it looked still. I don't think it had any issues.
Yeah, they did a really good job of, despite like really packing like the backgrounds and environments with detail, they did a good job of clearly making apparent what is stuff you can interact with and what is stuff you can't.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Which is sometimes an issue with games that have really detailed, environments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And then you already said it kind of, but the animations I thought were really solidly done.
They're on
all
point.
The enemies are super unique in the way that they move around, and I think that was all really solid. Nothing about it blew me away, but I think that the style it has going for it is extremely unique. So
yeah, so like at the time, Donkey Kong Country, like the first one, was pretty mind blowing.
Yeah. No,
obviously these days technology is such that the things they do isn't all that impressive or surprising on its own, but like for the time it was amazing, and the fact that it was innovative at the time and still holds up today, as opposed to a lot of like innovation where you look at it and it's like, man, this looks terrible, and then people have to go, but compared to what else they had.
That's really what it is when you look at old games nowadays. Like, does this game look playable to you as like someone who's never played this before? If so, then like it does not look awful, is what I'm trying to say. Because if it doesn't, then that means it probably was super crazy impressive back in the day when it first came out.
Right.
Because of the fact that it still looks good, or decent now, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And for me, playing it for the first time, I don't know if you guys had... Well, I know Joel's played it multiple times now, but I don't know, Ron, if you played it at all before.
I played the original Donkey Kong Country, but I never played the second one before.
When I booted it up the first time, I didn't really have a reaction to the graphics at all, which I think pretty much, like... I don't know, just expands on what you guys are saying of, like... The graphics were really good for the time, and, like, it's to the point where today I didn't really notice them being bad. You know what I mean?
didn't notice that it was an old game, really.
Yeah, so it's extremely like playable in that aspect of the game, where it's like it didn't turn me off because it was Final Fantasy VII with polyhedrons. So
yeah, where they have 10 polygons to work with.
Yeah, exactly. So
when you guys discuss graphics, are you just talking like on a technical level, or does like art style and like visual design come into it too?
No, that definitely fits into it too.
Yeah,
it's just basically how the game looks in general.
Because one thing I adore about this game in particular is the variety of environments and the
yeah.
detail of the enemies.
Mhm.
Like, one of my biggest complaints about the revived series, Donkey Kong Country series, the ones Retro's been making, is their enemies have, for the most part, kind of just been animals, and
Yeah.
like there's not a very strong sense of theming to them. Whereas like they put a ton of design into most of the enemies in this game, like going with that whole pirate theme, and even just the base sprites. Like if you don't look at the like outfitting and everything, like there's a lot of personality just in their expressions and how they move.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I'll talk about this a little bit in the gameplay too, but I actually love this game compared to the first game because of the variety in the levels.
Yeah.
I just feel like there was a lot more. Like every world usually has a theme in like video games when you're playing. For instance, Mario games, every world has kind of like a little theme going for it. Whereas this one is like it has a theme, but there's every level is still extremely different in the way that it plays
Right,
and
so-
looks even.
Right.
The
I agree with that.
idea for the game was like you're going through this island, like
Mhm.
from landing on the beach or whatever, all the way up to the top of this thing, and like every level as you're progressing you're moving through new environments, and
Yep.
I think they did a good job of making that apparent in the design.
Yep, I agree with that.
I agree with that too. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. I don't even like. We might be getting into gameplay now, but the one I think it was the world that like the theme park world, where like all of a sudden I was like in a bee's like
Bee's nest, yeah.
Yeah, bee's
Oh,
nest,
yeah.
honeycomb, and it's just like it was stuff like that that like as far as like the environments go, it's like they sometimes change so much from level to level that it just really adds to the game experience. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, and I mean, I'll mention this in gameplay too. I'm just gonna say not because I'm thinking of it, but I was still discovering things towards the end of the game that I was at the beginning of the game. For instance, the snake can jump really high if you hold down.
Yep.
I didn't realize that until like the second to last level.
Or
The
parrot
roll,
shoots.
or the parrot shoots, or
Oh man, how much did you play without using the
what?
like the nut attack with the parrot?
quite a bit.
I played up until a level where you pretty much had to use
You
it.
had to, yep.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I did.
Because I was like Ron as well. I had no idea, and there was like certain parts of the game where I was like, "This is so difficult. You almost have to take like a Lost Kong at this
Yep.
part because like I don't know how else to get past it." But after learning that you could shoot, I looked back at those like areas. I'm like, "Those are easy." Like, so yeah.
Yeah, and the snake thing, I sat on this one spot forever because I'm like, how the hell do you jump high enough with the
I
snake?
did that too. I finally had to fucking Google a walkthrough of that level specifically.
Okay, because I did that exact same thing.
And then all of a
That's how I
sudden,
found
this
out.
guy's just jumping super high. I'm like, what the fuck is going
So-
on?
So all of the animals have all the buddies, as they're technically called,
Yeah.
have a like an alternate ability or like a super ability.
Yeah.
And they try to teach you that in the first world. Because the first time you get the snake, for instance, there's an optional little spot you can go to that needs a high jump, and they actually spell out the letter A with the with bananas to like give you the hint of, hey, hold down this button.
Oh, yeah. I think I remember seeing some of those, and then I'm like, what the hell does this mean? And I just
Right.
zoomed
Yeah, if you
past
don't
it.
know it's trying to teach you something, that doesn't do you a lot of good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so do we want to give some points here for graphics?
Yeah, because I feel like we're talking about gameplay now too.
Yeah, that's fine.
Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give it a 7.
I was also thinking about a 7. I think it holds up really well. But like obviously there's some datedness to the techniques they were using and everything. So like
Yeah.
it's not like there's a handful of Super Nintendo games I'd say have graphics on par with anything today, just in terms of blending art style into technology. This isn't
Yeah.
like that.
I think it puts it above average because of the fact that it still looks decent nowadays. But
Definitely, yeah.
I
Actually, can I go up to an 8 just because
Yeah.
I want to give it some tilt for the visual design side
Sure.
of things.
I am going to give it a 7 as well. Not to like copy you guys, but
Yeah,
um,
bandwagoner.
yeah, basically. But like I said before, like I played it for the first time, and when I booted it up, I didn't say like, "Oh God, this game looks like trash." So that means it must have been pretty damn good for its time. So
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely puts it above average for a Super Nintendo game, I'd say.
yeah, exactly. So
So how do you guys feel about skipping the gameplay and then going back to music?
yeah, that's fine since we're already
Yeah, I
talking
mean, we
about
kind of
Talk
already
about gameplay.
naturally are getting there, yeah.
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 Yeah. So this game is extremely difficult for people who don't know. I will go ahead and pretense this and say I save stated in the emulator a ton to get past this game in the amount of time I did.
We wouldn't have been able to beat it on time, honestly, if we hadn't. And that's kind of where that came from. Is like, we didn't start this early enough. We started it last week, and we're like, shit, we don't have the time to.
Yeah, and that's a thing. Like, this is very much a mid '90s platformer in that it's designed around the idea of, okay, this is going to be your only game. You're going to play it for a while, and you're probably going to have a lot of time to play it because you're probably 10 years old.
Yep.
So
Right.
it's gonna be challenging in that you're gonna die a lot as you're learning the level, and just through time and effort, you'll eventually get through stuff, and that's great and all until you're coming back to it as an adult with very limited free time, trying to play it on a timetable.
Yeah. I feel like this game could really benefit from a new funky mode.
A new funky mode? Yeah, dude. I think the new funky mode would be great.
No, I'll say this too, but I feel like this game could benefit from not having a life system. I kind of
Yeah, absolutely. And on top of that, something that this game does that's absolute bullshit, and like I adore this game, but no bones about it, this sucks, is the location-based save function, where like you have to get to a certain point in each world before you can save.
Yep.
The fact that you when you finally beat a boss, you still have to beat 2 or 3 more stages before you can save.
Yeah.
And if you have not been like grinding lives to make sure that you have enough to get through it, or
You're
for
fucked,
instance,
pretty much.
and not even just that, but like if you don't have time to beat 3 more stages after beating the boss, and like
That's true.
you can't just leave your Super Nintendo running, hey, you're gonna lose a bunch of progress.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of it in that aspect, but that is terrible.
Yeah, like for kids back in the day, I wonder how many people lost tons of progress due to their moms being like, okay, you've played enough games for today, and turning off their system.
Not only that, or how many times did they play the same levels over and over again because they can only play like for an hour. They beat a boss, they beat a level, and they just never got to like that save point. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, man, I can't even imagine doing World 6, the final level of World 6, and then World 7's first level back to back without saves.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it'd be insane. I
But
guess
also-
you can go back and you can save using a coin at the beginning of
Right. You can always,
that previous world.
which I
That's
bet people actually did.
Well, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have. The other thing that sucks about that, though, is you need coins. And you guys probably don't know this because you were playing on an emulator where you never really had to reset. But if you, like, reset, you lose all the, like, coins and lives and anything else you've picked up.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, you might not even have the currency needed to save the game after beating a hard thing. And I just don't understand why they did that. Like, what benefit to the game that adds?
Right. Yeah, I kind of agree with that too. I don't know.
I just feel like it was extra difficulty tacked on for the sake of making it more difficult.
It was difficult to make it, to
it was
make it more
already
difficult.
difficult enough platforming. And that's kind of what I was going to say too, is that the platforming itself. So this reminds me a lot of the complaints that people were having when Crash Bandicoot Remastered came out.
Yeah.
And I feel like I kind of echo a lot of that now with this game. Is that it's just there's a lot of really precision movement in this game in the same sense as something like Crash, but Crash is a 3D platformer too. But I will say that this game is a little bit more fluid in terms of its movement. It's more like when you screw up, you know that you screwed up because you're bad.
Right.
But it just has a lot of precise jumping and
there's definitely areas where it's super precise. Yeah. And now that I'm thinking of like some of the levels that I had problems with, Like, I know one of them was a snake level where if I would have known that I could have held A to jump higher, it would have been a lot easier.
Yeah.
But like, like some of the like parrot levels, especially have like the one where you're traveling through like all the like it's the thorn level where there's just thorns
The very
everywhere.
last one. Yeah.
Yeah, and like that's like extremely precise because there's multiple times where like if you move too far to the right or left and like you have very little, it's like a tunnel, like you were losing a Kong or a life.
So
So
Well,
that
there's a
was
part- Go ahead.
I adore the movement in this game for the actual Kongs. Like the like on the ground Dixie and Diddy gameplay is probably my favorite movement in a platformer anywhere ever.
Thanks.
It's incredibly fluid. I feel like I always have a perfect understanding of just how much movement I have. The speed at which you move, and the distance you get off the jumps, all
Right.
feels really, really good. The animals are almost universally bad. As far as momentum and hitboxes are concerned, the parrot in particular is like the number
I
of
don't
times I've
understand
played
how
this
you get
game.
damaged when the parrot gets hurt and you don't. Like that's really
It-
annoying.
Yeah, no, the hitbox of Squawks makes absolutely no sense, and the amount that he drifts when you're like flying. I've played this game so many times, and I still get all sorts of needless deaths on Bramble levels just because that fucking parrot is so hard to feel out.
yeah, that parrot sucks. I agree with that.
Yeah, because usually I'm looking at myself, not the parrot, when I'm trying to avoid damage. And
Well, so the
it's really
Kongs
frustrating.
are part of the hitbox.
Yeah, it's
Not
just a really long hitbox. Because
Yeah,
of
it's
that,
not,
right?
but not entirely. Like it's incredibly hard to intuit because there are parts of them that if they touch the level, you're fine. But if you get too far up, it'll hurt them before you hit the parrot.
Yeah, meanwhile, there's sections, with the thorns that you could be like half touching the thorn and you're fine.
Yeah, well,
It's
yeah.
just
There's.
very inconsistent.
Okay, so
And, like, if
I don't
you-
know if you guys. Sorry,
I was just gonna
Oh, I
say,
just
if you ever
wanna
watch.
you keep doing this. All right, I'll go first, and then Joel, you can go.
Sure.
Off of Ron's thing about the thorns, in some of the parrot levels, like the bottom thorns don't hurt you at all. I don't know if Ron realized that, but like some of those levels, you can just like go against the ground and be
Really?
fine. Yeah, I did it once. I was like, "What is this? It's a bunch of BS." Sorry. All right, Joel, you can go. I just wanted.
No,
to
I was
say
just
that
gonna
quick.
say, the hitboxes of the. You're right. The stage itself is kind of wonky too. And if you ever watch speed runs, the Brembo levels are crazy because those speedrunners know the exact positioning to like cut through parts of that stage at speed, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That last stage that you guys mentioned that you're having trouble with, where you race the parrot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck that level.
The pro speedrun strats, you bypass the parrot entirely and don't have the race component.
I was gonna say, I feel like you'd have to
I'm-
like go really fucking fast.
I'm not surprised.
Um,
Yeah.
It's
I barely
crazy,
beat
and
him.
like
I think I beat
there's
him, like a millisecond.
there's
But that was in
there's
save states.
yeah, and there's like sequences where they'll like just kind of drop for a while because like they know exactly where they need to be to like avoid it. I mean, it's nuts, and I can't imagine how long it takes practicing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say there was like 0% chance that we were going to be able to finish this if we had to play it through.
Legit. Yeah.
Because of
Oh yeah,
things
you
like
would have
that.
needed way more than a week.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree.
I'll mention too, because I was going to say this earlier when we were talking about when I mentioned that I was discovering mechanics at the end of the game. Still, the very last level before, I think it was the very beginning of that thorn level, and you have to roll and then jump.
Yeah.
Like roll while you're hovering. You have to jump while you're hovering above spikes, and jump
Oh.
at the
yeah.
very beginning. That's like the only way to get past that section. I did not realize that was a thing until that section.
Oh, yeah,
And
no,
you use it, and then you use it like 3 more times in that level too. So
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how much more, I guess, or less trouble you guys would have had with some of the stages if you'd known all the like movement-based mechanics and stuff from the start.
oh yeah,
Because-
yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say because there's a lot of sections of that game that assume you do know, and like you could probably get past without, but like part of the reason why I love it so much is when you have a strong sense of all the movement and like all the tools at your disposal, like you can just whip through sections of that super fast because a lot of the stages are kind of designed for if you kind of hold forward, keep moving at speed, and know when to time your jumps, like everything will line up for you as you're approaching it.
It's almost like a rhythm game then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that if I knew some of the mechanics at the beginning of the game, they would be much easier.
Oh, dude, I think me and Matt both didn't realize you could run until like World 3.
No, I knew you could run.
No, 100%, Matt. We did. Okay.
No, you like hold down the run button because you jump higher when
you were
running.
asking me in World 2, is there any way to run in this game? I 100% remember that.
Okay, but after I figured out that like whatever boss it is, with the sword, is that like the second boss? It must be.
Cleaver. That's the second world.
Like you hold down run even when you're jumping on those hooks because you go a lot further.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
well,
that's when I figured out run. It's probably the end of World 2.
That's what I'm saying, is that I feel like the first couple of worlds would have been way easier for us if we had known that.
I watched an LP of Super Mario RPG one time where the people playing didn't find out you can run in that game until like the 12th episode.
Nice.
They had somehow managed to fuck their way to some side area that you're supposed to like do run jumps to get to. And I don't know how they got there, but like they thought they were soft locked in the game because they couldn't get back. And like they spent a bunch of time going like, well, what are we gonna do? Like we're stuck. This game fucking sucks. What the hell? And then they discovered that if you hold down one of the buttons on the controller while you're moving, you run.
Nice.
And I was just like, how can that happen? But now I know.
Yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I felt embarrassed after I found out. It's because, like, I knew that you could roll with the Y button, but I didn't realize that after you rolled, if you kept holding it,
yep.
Right.
You were going to keep momentum. Yeah.
Yep, you were going faster. Yeah, I don't know. It's just...
Yeah, that's fair, because the button did something when you pressed it, so you assumed you know what that button does.
Yeah, I was like, I was attacking people with that button, like, rolling.
Exactly.
There were probably times when you started running a little bit because you held it down afterwards and didn't even realize it.
Yeah, exactly. I relied heavily on Dixie's... hair in the first couple worlds.
I think we need to discuss how much easier the game is with Dixie versus Diddy, I feel like.
So, I 100% disagree with that.
I feel like Diddy's easier to move and jump around with.
Yep.
But Dixie just makes it easier to get past, like, waves of sections.
The hair thing is just so, so nice.
Yeah.
Like, you can skip entire sections of the game with it.
Yeah, it's nowhere near Super Mario World levels of skipping levels, but
no.
I mean, that's something I really like about the gameplay of the original Donkey Kong Country trilogy and hate about the new games is the fact that you have access to two Kongs that have different gameplay, like they're each is uniquely designed within the game, and you can switch between them at will. Means there are advantageous Kongs to have for certain parts of certain levels.
Right.
Like if you're on the ground doing stuff on the ground, you want Diddy because he's got a smoother jump and just a little bit better momentum when he's running. If there's going to be a lot of air stuff, you want Dixie for that, being able to fine tune where you're going to land and like being able to hover over gaps.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can.
Beginning of the game, Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the fact that you can switch between them and use them both to their strengths is so cool, and that's something that's really, really missing from the new games.
I was going to say, I found myself, I think at the beginning of the game, relying heavily on Dixie in terms of just basically using her 24/7, and then I found myself towards the end of the game actually switching to Diddy for some sections and switching back to Dixie for other sections, depending on what I was doing. If there was going to be like chains and stuff like that and jumping around and hooks, I was going to use Dixie. But if it was going to be like a lot of platforming, I preferred to use Diddy, honestly.
Yeah, that's how I played when I first started playing it as a kid. Was a lot of Dixie because it felt like she could bail you out of stuff a lot.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then as I got more comfortable with the game, more familiar with the game, I started realizing, oh wait, actually, there's a lot of these things that's easier with Diddy now that I know now I'm comfortable with how he moves.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I feel like we discussed gameplay a lot.
We did.
Do you guys feel comfortable enough to make a score?
Well, yes. So Oh, Joel, go for it.
Oh, I was gonna say I did wanna have a bit of a rant about the relative gameplay of the old Donkey Kong Country series and the new one.
Sure.
Um, so specifically around the I talked a little bit about how losing the ability to switch between Kongs really I think is a negative change to the gameplay, but also the movement itself. Donkey Kong in the new games moves so slow and has such a heavy jump, which I realize makes sense for a 2,000-pound fucking gorilla, but it always feels like I'm not going to make jumps. It always feels like I'm not gonna reach where I'm trying to get to fast enough with the game. It feels like it feels sluggish in a way that this game you feel like you're constantly moving along, constantly zipping. You can make, I don't know, it's just there's something to the feel of it that I feel has really been lost.
Sure.
And
you still like newer games, all right?
Oh yeah, I still really enjoy them. I just think they're lacking compared to their predecessors.
Sure.
Stage design as well. I feel like this game did a lot more with verticality. There's stages where you're climbing the whole time. There's stages where you've got upward and horizontal movement. And I don't feel like they really do much of that in the new game. As well as, I kind of mentioned how things are tuned so that if you are, once you become more comfortable with the stage, you can clear through sections of it incredibly quickly because you, if you have the timing for everything right, you can kind of just keep moving forward and everything will be in place for you. Whereas I feel like the new games have a lot of set pieces they build up where you kind of have to wait for things to fall into place. And that sucks for a game where you're kind of expected to die and replay stuff a bunch as you learn the level. Because once you've seen that set piece once, you don't want to wait for it again. You just want to be able to blast through it.
Yeah.
And that's especially bad for the bosses in Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, which take forever. Because there's so much waiting for the right setup, waiting for animations, waiting for the next stage to start. Whereas, for the most part, in Donkey Kong Country 2, some of those bosses are really tough. I probably die to King Zing's Sting 40 times every time I play it because I just fucking suck at it.
Fuck that. Yep. It's not that his hitbox is small, but it's also that a lot of him also protects his hitbox.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep. It's very finicky where you can actually hurt him.
Yeah.
The floating mechanic to go up and down and stuff is so when you go up a certain amount, so you almost have to be low enough to predict exactly how high you have to go so that you can hit him perfectly in the stinger. Yeah.
Yep. But for as finicky as that is, it takes approximately 20 seconds to beat him once you know how it goes.
Oh,
so
yeah.
If you're constantly restarting, it's not taking a ton of time. And you feel okay, I can keep beating against this until I get the feel for it, and you can slowly learn his patterns, learn the right time to you can go through that pretty quick if you're not comfortable, you can wait for him to get into a certain position, and it still only takes a few seconds.
Yeah.
Whereas there are bosses in Tropical Freeze that will take 2 to 3 minutes on a good run where you actually beat it.
Huh.
And to me that's frustrating. If I'm not constantly pushing towards forward progress in a game like this, I get frustrated and bored and end up dropping it.
Yeah. I know what you mean. Matt and I are actually planning on playing Tropical Freeze in co-op over the next several weeks.
Yeah.
I'm curious how much co-op changes it because
Exactly.
having both players controlling Kong separately. I played a little bit of co-op.
Easier or harder? I don't know.
Right. I played a little bit of co-op on Donkey Kong Country Returns, but it was with my sister who doesn't really play games.
Sure.
So she wasn't
it'll be
very
just like
good.
playing with me then, so.
Well, she was just uncomfortable with the basic controls of a video game,
Oh.
Sure.
which ends up being more of a hindrance than a help.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really curious how that goes for you guys.
Co-op in this, is it the person that's playing that character that died is just dead until you get another box?
I think boxes float in for you to pick up, if I remember
okay.
correctly.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah.
Anyway, that'll be cool. Yeah, we're gonna play that after this. I think tomorrow is when we're starting that, right?
Yeah. Let's do it tomorrow.
Neat.
All right. So do we want to
Anyway,
give
yeah.
scores to this?
Yeah, there was my rant over.
Okay. I'm now going to go on a rant. No, not really. Not a short rant. About the gameplay. So I am going to rate this based on how it should be played, not with save states like I played it. If that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
And in that case, to me, the difficulty of this game just like kills the game and any joy I would ever have playing it. Not only like we talked about it already with like you have to save, and if you get a game over, then you're like there's only like one save point per world, pretty much, right? And not only that, but like even the levels themselves have like I feel like there should be twice as like three checkpoints, not just one, like in the middle of the level, because like some of the sections of the levels are like extremely difficult, and like I died to them, like not.
Yeah, I'll
hundreds,
say
but,
that is a good improvement of the newer franchise. Like the levels are longer, I think, overall, but they have a lot more checkpoints in them.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think a lot of my complaints, like with the, like basically just come around the game over, just restarting you completely, pretty much. And like if you would do away with the life system, this game becomes like so much more enjoyable. But
yeah, just make it save after every level and get rid of the life system, and then you're fine.
Yeah. So, that like I don't like. It's hard for me to give this like an above average score because I just feel like it would be way too difficult for me to play normally. So I'm gonna give it a 3.
Wow.
Jeez. That fucking Jesus good. But yeah, that makes sense. So the benefits. Sorry, not the benefits.
I want to go 4. Sorry. I want to cut you off. Yeah, only because the difficulty is only one aspect of the game, and like otherwise, besides the difficulty, like the game's extremely solid.
Yeah.
Right, and the fact that there's so many ways to play it these days where you can get around that problem, I think does help.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does.
Like,
So
obviously, yeah, you
using
shouldn't.
save states is what basically made it.
It saved the game for me. Like with save states, the game becomes more like a 6 or a 7 pretty easily for me.
Right.
But like
And
I
it's
said,
fair, and it's fair to knock some points off because you need to go outside of how the game was designed in order to bypass that issue. Like that's 100% fair to like drop some points for that. But
They just need to do a re-release with a funky mode, and then we're good.
except for the funky mode is just like no lives.
If they did a Donkey Kong Country Trilogy remaster that still plays like the old games, but like they fix the issue with like the lives and honestly, if they use the Donkey Kong Country 2 engine for 1 because the movement in 1 is not great.
Yeah. That would be...
Like, that is a slippery game.
I would actually love that.
Oh, I would be so into a remastered Donkey Kong Country Trilogy.
Yeah. Maybe that's what Retro's actually working on.
Could you imagine?
Probably not. But yes. All right.
So I mean, I have a lot of the same complaints as Matt. I mean, obviously using save states is what got me through the game. So I feel like it's hard to gauge exactly how difficult it really would have been for me. I probably honestly would have rage quit, you know. The name of the podcast right there. There you go. Before I finished it, I think, and probably come back to it at another time and rage quit again. And like 18 times over the course of 2 months, likely, before I actually beat it.
It's not an ideal way to play a game.
Yeah, you know, real way to play. And I probably would have tried more of the side stuff / Lost World levels. And,
I guess doing all the bonus stages and all that.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it's hard to shit on this game too hard because a lot of the stress and the frustration with this came from trying to finish this over a certain time period, which is kind of just something that comes with the territory of having to do this on the podcast.
Well, and this, like, if trying to,
issue
I would,
not starting it early.
Yeah, I would say, like, trying to play on a time frame isn't going to hurt you that much in, say, a Kirby game.
Yeah.
But for something like this, yeah, you definitely put yourselves in a position where you weren't going to be able to maybe take the time with it, and give it the time and focus that maybe it demands by merit of how difficult it is.
Yeah. So the difficulty and the fact that I didn't get to play the full experience make it hard to give a full judgment on this, but I did find the gameplay itself, jumping around, everything really good. And for that reason, I'm going to go ahead and just give it 5, because I feel like everything kind of balances itself out in that aspect. So that's just my thing. All right, Joel.
So I'm gonna give it a 9.
Ooh.
It definitely this might be my favorite platformer. It definitely has, like I mentioned earlier, it has like my favorite movement out of any platformer ever. I have to take a little bit off because you guys are right about how some of the stuff is structured with the live system and everything. That's how games were at the time. Like there weren't a whole lot of games that weren't operating like that, but that's not really an excuse looking back on it of, there's no reason they couldn't have. It's not like it's a technical limitation of the system that they can't let you save more often.
Yeah.
That said, I originally played this game on Super Nintendo, and I also originally played the Game Boy. The Game Boy game is weird because it's not a straight 1-to-1 port. It has a few less stages, and the stages are redesigned significantly. But it's the same basic game. The problem is the Game Boy being such a weaker system, the movement's a lot worse. There's some features that just aren't included. But it follows the same structure. It has the same limitations, and I beat that even like 102% as a kid. So like, I don't feel like
it's definitely doable. In the sense
I don't feel like those
issues.
Yeah, I don't feel like those issues really hold it back from its true potential.
Yeah. You kind of feel probably similar about this as I do Blast Core, which Matt also hated. So.
I will say, to like this game's defense, I feel like if I played it again, I would enjoy it a lot more because I understand the mechanics a lot more than I did beforehand.
By the way,
I would recommend, if you guys have some time, just going back to it sometime soon, just for a little bit. Like, don't try to replay the whole thing, maybe, but just go back and replay some of the stages where you haven't. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but every stage you get all the bonus stages in, it'll have an exclamation mark after the name. And if you get the DK coin in the stage, it'll also put a symbol for that. So just even going back to your existing save and trying to replay some of the levels you haven't like completed fully. And just see how it plays now that you have more experience with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, how about my score up to a 6? Because I feel like I was thinking about it as Joel was talking. I'm like, I think positively about the gameplay in this game, so I'm just I'll put up a little bit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, let's move on to the best thing about this game, the sound.
Oh my god. I'm just gonna let you guys talk for a bit because
What's that?
I'm gonna let you guys talk for a bit because otherwise I'll just go on.
Sure. So I didn't really think much about this at first because I think I was along the same lines as Matt. I don't really pay that closely attention until it really stands out to me. But I love the variety in the levels music. Like, I know that there's several tracks that are repeated, but I feel like every level in each individual world had a different song pretty much.
It's templated. I don't know if you noticed, but so like World 2, for instance, has 2 sort of common themes. There's the like mine levels that are usually pretty vertical oriented, and then there's the like outdoor levels or like with lava and everything. And each of those environments has its unique theme.
Different, like music. But the music is fantastic. I know is it Grant?
Nope, this was Dave Wise.
Dave White, okay. Who's Grant Kirkhope?
He's also a rare composer. He contributed somewhat to this. I think he contributed heavily to the Banjo-Kazooie series.
Okay. I was gonna say, I feel like I know that name. Oh, he did DK64. That's what I was thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, him, Robin Beanland, and Evel. I can't think of what Evelyn's last name is, but she did primarily the DKC3 track. They were all anyway. There's a whole bunch of composers that were in house at Rare back in that day that collaborated a lot. And when Overclocked Remix did a cover album of this soundtrack, they actually got Dave Wise, who then rounded up some of the other Rare guys from the time to do a cover of one of the tracks.
Nice. That's really cool. Yeah, I don't know. The music is fantastic. I found myself listening along to a few of the songs, especially like when you beat the level and they play depending on who you're playing as, the song that plays. I found myself listening along to that every single time I beat the level. Just fantastic, and yeah, I just absolutely loved it. Anyway, go ahead.
Did you notice that the instruments they use in the stages vary? So like the same, so like it'll play so it'll play the same like jingle at the end when they win, but you'll notice that the actual tones of it are different because there's a different set of instruments used for each song.
Because I knew that Dixie plays guitar at the end of most of the levels.
So like there's some stages where like the backing to her guitar riff or whatever will be like more of a steel drum, and then there's times where it's more of a, I don't know percussion well enough, but more of like a timpani or a snare, depending on what instruments were used for the track in that level.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah. The overworld theme, every single level's theme, the sound in the game. I had absolutely zero complaints about the music of this game. I thought it was fantastic.
I like some of the sound effects for enemies.
Yeah.
I feel like such a failure right now because I didn't notice any of this stuff. I just must.
You're supposed to not care about music in games, Matt.
Yeah, I must just not pay attention to music in the games, and I've said this in multiple times previously, but if I don't notice the music, I feel like it must be really good. I only notice the bad music, so I don't know.
Well, I mean, there is some validity to that. Like a good soundtrack should integrate itself with the experience so well that if you aren't paying attention to it, it just feels like part of it.
Exactly.
And if you're noticing the soundtrack, it's probably because it's clashing with what else is going on, or is just poor enough quality that it drags you out of it.
Yeah.
The fact that you can kind of
aggressively too much that you're getting frustrated by it. Yeah. Then you know that.
Yeah. The fact that you kind of can just get pulled in by it and it's just part of the experience, I think speaks highly.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all? Sorry, I kind of jumped in. Did you have more to say about it? Or?
No, that was it. I was just kind of figuring out if we want to rate now or if we want to.
Okay, well, I mean, I can talk about it for a bit.
If you want to.
All right.
I don't know if I have anything else to say about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just from a sound design perspective, it's really good in that there's a really varied soundtrack with, but it's still connected. Like I mentioned, the different actual background songs match up with specific settings for the levels. So the swamp levels all have kind of the same theme to them. The bramble levels all have the same theme, etc.
Yeah.
Which adds a sort of cohesiveness to it, I think, which probably helps it become sort of a background thing that you just kind of accept. But also there's background noise, I guess the swamp theme, because I mentioned it. There's frogs croaking in the background, and every once in a while you hear little bloops of the swamp.
I did notice that. Boom. Yes.
Oh.
I knew something.
Nice. But also it's I feel like Dave Wise used every instrument available in the Super Nintendo sound palette at some point.
Yeah.
And he didn't try to overload each track with too much stuff, but he selected a couple of different instruments that really fit the type of music he was trying to do for a specific level, and just really used them to their full potential. And I love that he has a variety of different styles of music for the different stages. And I love how musically complex they are. It's not just a a melody line and some background stuff. It's actually composed songs.
Yeah.
There's songs that will have just kind of quiet setup pieces where it's just maybe a little percussion and maybe just some background sound, and then the instruments start coming in. There's a nice sense of urgency that comes and goes, which I think is nice, because a lot of background songs and a lot of games are just high adrenaline all the time, which ends up being a little stressful when you're replaying the stages over and over.
And dying a lot, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so I like that a lot of them are more chill out. Like, people talk about the Stickerbush Symphony, Stickerbush Symphony. I kind of split the difference between the two ways people say it. That's the background music in the Bramble levels, and like that's such a chill out track, and I love that it's in some of the most stressful stages of the game.
Yeah.
I feel like it kind of helps counterbalance a little bit, maybe some of the frustration. Where you're like, yeah, like at the very least, it's good music to listen to while you're playing over and over. And this is a really small touch, but it's one of my favorite tracks in the game. So there's a stage, or there's a song that's only used twice in the game. It's called Snaky Shanty. It's the one, if you remember that stage where you play as Radley, the snake, on a ship.
Yep.
Oh, yep.
All right, so the song that's used there is only used there and in a stage a couple of levels earlier. I believe it's an underwater stage where at the very end you exit on a ship, and in that spot where you exit, it's also playing that same background song, but like you're probably only gonna be there for a few seconds, so you don't really
notice it. Yeah.
But what I love about that is it's a remix of the boss theme from Donkey Kong Country 1, where you fight King K. Rool on a pirate ship.
Yeah. Jeez. I was gonna say, I remember that boss fight. I think I watched speedruns of people playing that. So that makes sense. That's cool though.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, it's a 10 for me. Like, flawless sound effect or soundtrack, sound design, everything.
Nice.
Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, I was also gonna give it a 10. So.
Damn. You guys are just like...
It's one of these things now that I've played this that I feel like I can go listen to remixes and other things related to this now and appreciate.
Yeah, I'll hook you up with the link to Serious Monkey Business, which is the Overclocked Remix album. There's some really good stuff on there.
I struggle to find stuff on Overclocked Remix. Like, I feel like their site is not very intuitive in trying to locate music.
It's not. Like, it hasn't been redesigned in many years, and you can really tell.
Yeah. I just wish they had like some kind of system to look at like the top rated songs lately, stuff like that, like stuff I can just like sample. I don't know. I feel like if you don't know what you're looking for, it's hard to find stuff on there.
Yeah, it's not very well built for discovery.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm gonna give it an 8. I just want to let everyone listening know that I have given 7s to almost all of the games in sound, so an 8 is good in my book.
Yeah, but like for on the MAT scale, that's really high.
It's pretty. Yeah, it's just like it's one of those things I just don't notice the music in games, I guess. So
well, no,
it's
and
hard
that's
for me
fair.
to
like
give a 10.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't engage strongly with that component, it's really hard to objectively critique it.
Cool. All right, the last category, which is not last, but second to last category, is gonna be kind of hard to do because it's just narrative. This probably it's going to be a little bit shorter than the other ones, but.
So I was just gonna say, like, the narrative is that it's Donkey Kong. Like,
you're saving Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I don't know if there is anything past that really.
There is slightly. It's a Super Nintendo game, or a platform on a Super Nintendo. So like the story is like 60% in the manual and 40% like stuff you intuit from the environment and whatnot. So I mean the on the box story or whatever synopsis of the game is after Donkey and Diddy beat King K. Rool in the first game, he went off to he went off and like recouped or whatever and came back with a a band of his minions now pirate themed for whatever reason. And they kidnapped Donkey Kong and stole the Kong's banana horde again. And so Donkey and his girlfriend Diddy went off to Crocodile Island, which is where the Kremlings come from, to get him back.
Nice. This was the today I learned, but it was when I started the game, that Diddy and Dixie were boyfriend girlfriend and not brother and sister. So yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know that until this very moment. So.
Oh,
I mean,
I knew started after, like, I looked it up starting the game. I don't know what I was looking at, but it was like, or you can use Dixie, Diddy's girlfriend, and I was like,
Yeah, so it's in the
interesting.
manual, and I think it's on the back of the box. But that's, I mean, again, for a game of this era, those are about the only places where you would learn anything about the
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I will say that, like, past the story and looking at the setting, because we kind of talked about characters being like Diddy and Dixie and all that, but the setting of the game and the fact that, we talked about it earlier in the podcast, but like Joel said, like, you're literally going through this island, and after you beat a level, you're moving on to like the next part of the island, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's super
Yep.
cool. That's a really cool concept that they do, and like each level is not like significantly different, but there is some levels that are significantly different than other ones. But each level is just like a different setting in that aspect, and I think that's really well done. So
I don't know if you guys looked too closely at the like world map as you were moving through it, because I know I didn't until subsequent playthroughs. But they actually put a lot of detail on that map to give you a sense of physically where you are beyond just the stage name. So like
Yeah.
you'll actually see like the the world map for each world is supposed to be kind of like an overview of this section of the island, and you're seeing as you're moving through it, okay, so I'm starting out on this section of land, then I'm going to be on this broken down ship for a bit, and then like you can kind of pick out where the next stages are going to be before you get there.
yep,
Mhm.
And I don't know, I just really like that attention to detail where it's not just, okay, these are the dots on the map where you're, you know, to represent where you're going. Like they actually put some effort into the visual design.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought it looked really good.
You can actually
I
see
didn't pay close enough attention to it. I probably should have. But.
there's actually a section on the last full map of the area, or the last full worlds, like before you get to the Flying Croc, where the final boss is, where you can actually see Kong Island in the background,
Oh, really?
like the big fucking DK stone face or whatever.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to give scores?
Sure.
Oh, I know Ron didn't really talk much about it. I wasn't sure if he had anything to say.
I mean, I kind of echo a lot of the stuff you guys are saying. There's not a lot to talk about here, I feel like, other than the characters and the story, and we kind of already discussed the setting, so I don't have too much to add in terms of that, but I definitely agree with what you guys were saying. So.
As a fun fact, I just recently was on the Donkey Kong Country wiki for whatever reason. And boy, that wiki goes super in-depth with the plot of the Donkey Kong Country series, considering how little, like, canonical content there is.
I was gonna say, it's pretty standard too. It's like, oh, bad guy did something bad. You're going through levels to get to bad guy. Bad guy.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, it's
Fights.
bad guy kidnap father, go save father.
No, like,
is-
to
it
give
is
you an
literally-
idea of how absurdly granular that wiki gets, in the section, and like the breakdown for King K. Rool himself, it talks about how he keeps stealing the Kong's banana horde, presumably to deplete their food supply. And then in parentheses, it's like, it's possible, although unconfirmed, that he also enjoys eating the bananas. Like, somebody cares way too much about Donkey Kong and has admin rights to that wiki.
Yeah.
Jeez.
That's awesome. All right.
I want some fanfic.
Oh, I'm sure it's out there.
I'm sure it is.
All right, Ron, I think it's your time to go first.
Okay, I'm gonna give it a 7.
Nice.
I mean, there's nothing I can't complain about. It's a very standard SNES story-based game. I feel like.
Yeah,
it's-
I don't
That's
demand
what
a
it
lot
is.
of story from platformers, to be honest.
Exactly. That's why
Yeah.
it's hard to like. You can't hurt the game that much because of that. So it's
agree.
above average. It didn't engage me crazy amount, but it was perfectly fine. So,
Yeah.
I'm actually
Alright.
gonna say an 8 along the reasonings of I don't demand a lot of story.
yeah.
I feel like they would have actually so they did a port of these games to Game Boy Advance,
Mhm.
and I actually don't like those ports very much for a few reasons. But one of the reasons is they tried to bring story into it more. Like at the end
Oh.
of every stage, Cranky shows up to talk about where you're gonna go next.
That's
And yeah, and like there's all these little side mini game things that try to like flesh out the characters and everything, and it all just feels like kind of an intrusion. Like, I don't feel like the game really needed more fleshing out. Like, it does everything it needs to with the presentation. And that's actually why I'm rating it higher, is because it didn't try to do anything it didn't need to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give it an 8 as well. Just because, like, first of all, it's Donkey Kong, and for reasons that you guys had said, and for what I talked about earlier with, like, the settings of the levels and stuff, so.
Yeah, you don't demand a lot from this kind of game, so.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I thought this section would be shorter, because it's like there's not a lot to talk about, and also I don't think there's a lot to complain about. So
yeah.
Yep.
All right. So right before we do the final bias score, we like to just quickly talk about two little things, which are what was your favorite part about the game, and then what is your biggest complaint you have about the game. So
I feel like we've got a decent idea for these already, but
yeah.
I can go first for the favorite part. I'm just gonna say 100% the music. I mean, I kind of already gave that with my score, but I found it fun to play because of the fact that the music was so good. Just listening to the music, so that's kind of what redeemed a lot of the game for me. So.
Cool. I'll go next here, and it's something we haven't talked about and nobody mentioned yet, but the minecart levels were definitely my favorite part about the game.
There wasn't very many of them in this game.
No, there was only like 2, I think. One where
you're the roller coasters in this case.
Yeah, yeah, the roller coasters, whatever. The one you're racing like other
you're
people.
Jumping on people's head.
Yeah, and then there's another one where you're trying to run away from like ghosts, I believe. Is it 2?
Oh, yeah.
They're easily in my favorite.
I think there's another
in the
one
game.
as well.
I think there's 3. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Oh, there might be another one.
I liked the ghost one a lot. It was super precise. Like you had to hit those things as you're jumping, but it was really fun.
That's a good example of the good level design in that game, because it starts out pretty easy and then they slowly introduce more challenges based around that concept. Like they eventually, like, because they start out just giving you pluses you have to collect, and then you end up with some minuses that get thrown in, and then they start doing tricky things with like really precise jumps to get
and opening the doors and stuff too.
Yep.
You have to.
Oh yeah, was that the same level?
Yeah.
Oh, that might have been the one. I might.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that was the other level.
It was maybe the previous level, or one of the previous levels, yeah.
So that's the one I think Joel was saying was the other one, because you have to open you don't know if you have to open the door or not.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
All right. Boy, I have a hard time picking a favorite part about this game because so much I love about it. I think if I had to pick anything, I think this is kind of a broad, generalized thing, but I've mentioned it a couple times now. It's just how well tuned it is. Where the stages are really designed so that if you really know what you're doing, you can just fly through them. And it's just so satisfying to nail a really long section of the game, just because like you've played through it a few times, you know where all the enemies are, you know where all the jumps are, what the timing for everything is, and just the sense of satisfaction of pulling that off properly is among the like my favorite things in games I've played.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. I know that. I think like you were saying, I think me and Matt would like the game more if we played it again, just because we probably know those sections a little bit better now. So it'd be definitely easier.
All right,
biggest complaint. I could take the easy route and just say the difficulty, but I'm gonna switch it up and I'm gonna say fuck the Thorns levels.
Oh, nice.
I just hated those Thorns levels. They're frustrating.
I will go ahead and take the easy route and just say the life system in general. Like, just do away with lives, and I think this game is like twice as good as what it is in my mind right now. So.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely like what we were discussing about it's the combination of the lives, the limited chances to save, and just the checkpointing is not very respectful of the player.
Yeah.
There's the most notorious level in the game, one that you guys will probably never get to. It's the last level of the Lost World, the bonus world stuff. It's a gauntlet where you go through all the different animal buddies.
Sure.
So like
Oh
there's a
god.
section where you're Rambi the Rhino, and then you switch up to. Oh boy, I want to say I think you go underwater and you're on guard for a while, and then you come out of that, and I believe then you are. I think you're Squitter. But anyway, the second half of that level is incredibly difficult, and it took me so long just to get past the first section of that. And when I did, I found out there was a whole another animal sequence I hadn't done yet that I still had to get through. And I was just like, oh my god. And if this was a modern game, I feel like there would have been a checkpoint after each section.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And that would have helped the enjoyability a ton without really hurting the difficulty at all, because each of those sections is still a fucking gauntlet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it kind of splits it up in a sensible way that makes
Yeah,
it
well,
to just repeat stuff.
Well, and it lets you feel good about your accomplishments so far, because you feel like, okay, it took me 20 tries, but I beat the Rambi section. It's behind me now. I've been rewarded for my perseverance.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you get
I'll
through
say
a
this,
really tough
actually.
section and then die and have to do that again, it's just ugh.
Yeah. I'll say this just to kind of echo along those same lines. I played Celeste earlier this year, and
Yes.
Celeste has pretty similar difficulty to this game, I feel like. But it also is a screen-by-screen basis, so it's similar
Yes.
to, like, VVVVV in that aspect, DX6. But every single screen, you get it saves on, right? So if you die, you just do that thing over and over again. But and I feel like that upped my enjoyment of that game heavily compared to this game. And if they did something, if they had it more in the sense that it didn't hate the player as much, it'd definitely be more enjoyable.
Okay, cool.
So I can deal with difficulty, just can't.
Yeah,
can't
it's
deal with
it's
the time.
yeah, it's the respect for time. It's a
Exactly.
similar but in a different way complaint with the new games, where it takes for fucking ever to get through certain sequences just because of all the like waiting around for stuff.
Yeah,
It's the same problem of it. I don't feel like it's respecting my time when I have to replay it.
I feel like the new games are definitely easier, right? Would you say that? Because I got through. I feel like I remember getting through Tropical Freeze with no issues.
Oh, there's some.
I definitely got
fucking-
through Returns with no issues. That was because I played it on 3DS.
There are some fucking frustratingly difficult sections in Tropical Freeze.
Is there? Okay. I also
Can't-
didn't. Oh,
can't
I
wait.
didn't do as much of the side stuff in that. either, though.
I think the big difference with Tropical Freeze is they give you a lot of things to help, because you can get armor and additional hearts that you can take into the stages if you're having trouble, and like ways to mitigate certain issues.
Yeah.
Plus the aforementioned better checkpointing makes it, I think, helps a little bit. But I think the actual challenge of it is still pretty high.
Okay. I just couldn't remember. It's been forever since I played Tropical Freeze, and I played it really quickly. So
Yeah, I've been steadily playing through it since it hit Switch.
yeah. What were we gonna say, Matt?
I was just gonna say that we should move on to bias, but that's fine.
All right, no, we can do that. I just kind of was like sidetracked, but
No, it's
yeah.
okay.
So personal bias. What would you guys feel like ranking this game if you were going to give it a rating?
Out of 10, right?
I have no idea. Can you guys go first?
I mean, I can go first. It's a 10, like 100%. Like, it's one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, I could feel that, honestly.
Yeah.
Like if you enjoy a game enough from your childhood, or not even necessarily childhood, but just a game that you loved growing up, and you want to support it. I mean, you can recognize its faults, but it's still a perfect game to you. So.
I mean, yeah, if you're, yeah, it depends on. There's always the
perfect,
argument
but
with a
yeah.
10
Yeah,
out of 10,
10.
right? Like a perfect score is like, does it really mean perfection?
It's very hard to, because
'Cause I don't think
10,
there's-
I feel like, but
There's no such. I've never played a game that I thought was flawless.
I don't
Like,
think there ever
there's
will be
always
a flawless
something.
game, so.
this comes about as close. Like, this comes to the ideal for me of none of the flaws in any way impact my overall enjoyment of the product.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll go. I'm gonna give it an 8. I mean, I gave it. I'm kind of like looking at my scores that I gave it, and I gave it like 6, 7, and 10 for music, and I feel like the music itself is what bumps it up to an 8 versus a 7. So I just I mean, I enjoyed it a lot. I think it's really fun, and I would definitely keep playing the Donkey Kong Country series. I might play 3 at some point, not sure. Might do a little break after this one, but and we're going to do Tropical Freeze anyway, so. But
So like Donkey Kong in your future.
yes.
Yeah. I'm gonna give it. See, I just have such a difficult time rating this because, like, if I hadn't been save scumming it, I would just hate my life right now.
True.
I'm gonna give it a 7, based on the fact that I save scummed it.
Sure.
Just because I feel like if I didn't, I would have enjoyed it a lot less. But I don't know. The game was fun, and got really frustrated. And I think Ron thinks I hate this game.
It's because no, honestly, I know how you are, Matt, and you
Yeah.
you are the epitome of this podcast name.
I am actually. I rage really hard at a lot of games.
Because every single game we played, he's been on Discord with me sometimes, and he's been like, "Fuck this game! This game's fucking
Okay,
sucks."
I don't think I said that in Star Fox 64, but fuck Blast Corps and fuck this stupid drifting car. Anyway, I'm still really salty about that. Was more difficult than this game with save scumming easily.
Really? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, those stupid drifting car levels were just ridiculous. Anyway, no, I don't know. I won't say much about this except for it was really fun. It's definitely above average experience for me. So.
Sure. All right. Let me do some quick maths.
Quick maths.
I gave 38.
Oh God.
So I'm kind of curious why you don't have a formula in this cell to just
'Cause-
automatically add up the numbers from the previous ones.
Because we're dumb. Also, because we don't have the numbers in a separate cell from the names.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you
Which
could
we
just
should
do that. That's not hard.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we could. Joel, just you're completely changing things right now. Sorry,
Coming in here telling you how to do your own show.
Yeah.
Joel gave 45.
Listen, I'm
27 plus 7. That's a 34.
Yeah, listen, I was mostly just like covering for time while Ron was doing math.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. So out of 50,
Okay.
Ron gave it a 38, Joel gave it a 45, and I gave it a 34. So
Nice.
that's
Which
a pretty
is
good rating.
Pretty good rating for
Yeah.
for using an actual point scale.
That is
Yeah.
an average of 39.
Yeah, that's like basically a 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
It is directly below what we gave Far Cry 5. We gave Star Fox 23.
Star Fox 64.
I don't feel like most of the Star Fox games really hold up.
No, they don't.
No,
That's the
they
issue.
do. They definitely do.
Blast Corps, Matt gave 24. I gave 30. Even Blast Corps, which I loved growing up, I gave 30. So. Bayonetta is like the closest competition to it, which we gave 37 and around 40.
That game is
Bayonetta.
very aggressively not for me, but I understand why people love it.
Bayonetta was so good.
Bayonetta was
Anyway.
amazing, honestly.
Yeah.
Anyway. So that's pretty much it for this game. We
Um,
kind of went on a little longer than I thought
Yeah,
we would,
that's
but
fine.
that's fine.
Listen, you
we
brought me
always
on, you
do a-
should have known.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. We always do a recommend if you like section, and I think
Oh.
this one's pretty apparent that if you like platformers, you should probably just play this game.
If you like
You like
2D
difficult
platformers
games.
and you've never played Donkey Kong Country 2, what the hell is wrong with you? Try
Yeah.
that fucking game already.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm not saying for sure you'll like it, but like it's one of the like it's on everyone's all-time greats list for a reason. Like it's a defining game of the genre.
Yep.
Yep. All right.
Cool. So, for the next podcast, I believe me and Matt and Quantum are going to talk about God of War at some point. I don't know, Joel's doing like a play, or are you doing a video?
I'm watching a video of it.
Yeah. I don't know how far you are in it yet, but me, Quantum, and Matt have beaten God of War, and we need to discuss it at some point, so we'll probably record that in the next week or so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
you
after
guys,
that,
you guys
I
need to
believe-
get on that before everyone stops talking about it, because right now everyone's talking about it. So it's the perfect time to throw your voice in.
I know. My
think so.
thought was that we do it like next week or something.
Yeah.
Um,
I think that's the plan. So.
and I think after that, our next classic game is Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Man, you're just
Not
working through the
mistaken.
rare library, huh?
Yeah, I was gonna say we're just doing a bunch of rare games. We actually did Blast Corps too. I didn't even realize
Yeah.
that. That's 3 rare games.
And all of them were picked by Ron. I'm going to say that.
Is that true?
I don't think I picked Donkey Kong. I definitely didn't pick Blast Corps, and I don't think I, picked
definitely
Conker's.
Pick those 2.
I don't think I picked Conker's Bad Fur Day.
We picked Conker after Chase left.
Oh, that's right. It was one of those. Yeah.
I'm
okay.
curious.
Anyway,
I'm curious to hear what you guys thought of Conquer, because I don't know if that game holds up at all.
Yeah, honestly, I've never. I mean, I've played Banjo-Kazooie more recently, so I'll have a good perspective comparing that to those, because I played those in the last few years here. So
yeah.
But I have no idea what to expect with Conquer. I've heard it's really good. So.
All right.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
You want to go, man? Just go ahead.
That's Donkey Kong Country 2. Joel, do you want to shamelessly plug yourself right now?
Yeah, so like if you liked hearing me talk way too much, I do that pretty regularly over on my podcast network, audioentropy.com. We've got a billion different shows. If you want to hear me specifically, I'm on Teenagers with Attitude, where we are going episode by episode through the entire Power Rangers franchise. We're in the tail end of season 3 of Mighty Morphin, which means we're about ready to move on to Zeo, which is honestly a lot further than I ever pictured myself getting. So there's tons of content there and tons more to come. I also have a similar show about Digimon called Digimon Digital Moncast, also on the network. I occasionally appear on other shows. We've got like fucking 20-something shows by now, so just check out our site. You'll probably find something you'd enjoy.
That's audioentropy.com.
Yes.
Yep. We also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/audioentropy, where I sporadically am uploading episodes of a Let's Play I'm doing with my friend Emily, where we're playing through Deus Ex Human Revolution.
Nice.
Yeah, that's really fun, and I am terrible at concentrating on playing a game while also carrying on a conversation, so there's a lot of me wandering around environments, not realizing where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
But that's been a lot of fun.
So you're saying you'd be a really good streamer?
Oh yeah. I mean, I did 8 hours of a Nuzlocke for Extra Life last year, and
did you?
yeah, by the tail end of that, I had twice forgotten to release some Pokemon after they fainted, and wound up reviving them at the Pokemon Center, so I had to send them back out to die.
Nice.
Well, you could have just released them. I don't think that
you had
to send them out to die.
Listen, I was 8 hours into gameplay at that point and very insistent that the zombie Pokemon needed to be defeated before we could move on.
That's fair. That is fair. Hopefully they had like Splash or something that made that easier, but probably not.
Yeah, that so that the video of that is also somewhere on our YouTube channel. We also have a bunch of other stuff, so yeah, check it out.
Sweet. All right. Well, I think that's it for this podcast. You can check us out in multiple different ways. Our Facebook is Rage Quitters Podcast. Our YouTube is just Rage Quitters. And then our Twitter is Rage Quitters Cast. But if you just search Rage Quitters, you'll be able to find us on any of those things.
It's a struggle to find us on YouTube, from what I've gathered.
Well, that's because
I'm kind of surprised that the words "rage quitter" are so
that's fair.
That's
fair on YouTube. Also, it doesn't help that we have like 7 views.
Yeah.
So like,
but you can if you find our Facebook or our Twitter, which are much easier to find, there's links to the YouTube on there. If you prefer to navigate to it that way. I've been consistently uploading at least 2 videos a week now. So
and I have uploaded 0. So I just I
have a huge backlog of videos, mostly Fortnite. I've been doing Rocket League as well, and I think I'll have a PUBG one this week as well. So, which I haven't played in like a month, but it's an old video. So, but yeah, there's stuff on there to check out. So,
yeah. And else I'd like to thank Tokyo Machine for letting us use their song "Pixel" at the beginning of the podcast, and I'd like to thank Monody. Sorry, god damn it, I do that every time. It's because in the fucking sheet, you have Tokyo Machine, the artist, and then Pixel, the song name, and then the next one you have Monody, the song name, and then the Fat Rat, which is the artist. So I'd like to thank the Fat Rat for letting us use the song Monody that you're about to hear. Alright.
Awesome. Well, that's it, everybody. Have yourself a beautiful day.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.